Thanks for joining me on the Sports in the Making podcast. I'm your host, Don Cardona. This is episode number 27. Broadcast graphics are one of the main branding tools for sports networks with moving elements, data, and slick design. In this episode, I talk with Dave Kroner, who has helped implement many of the graphics packages that you see on a variety of networks, what the process is for creating those graphics, and what goes into working with his clients to make the sports viewing experience better. This is an episode that has visuals, so if you're listening, please be sure to subscribe to the Sports in the Making YouTube channel to see some of what we discuss. All right, with me today is Dave Kroner, a great friend of mine who I met while we were both at ESPN together. He's been a senior graphics systems developer at ESPN, Root Sports in Denver, covering the Colorado Rockies, and as an on-air graphics manager for the Golf Channel. Dave is now with the company TV Graphics as a vice president of creative services and also owns Xtreme Ninja Challenge in Kissimmee, Florida at Old Town, USA. So we'll talk about all of that stuff in just a bit. First off, I want to welcome Dave to Sports in the Making. Thanks, Dave, for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me, Don. This is fantastic. Long time.
So we won't waste a lot of time here. I hear your puppy in the background, but he or she's always welcome. So first question is, how did you get into sports broadcasting?
So I went to school for animation and media arts. I went to Art Institute of Philadelphia, and then right after school, I decided to go into the military. I was originally going to go in as a multimedia illustrator, but my recruiter decided to talk me out of that and do something that I wasn't going to do for my career. So I went in as a watercraft operator, being from Annapolis, Maryland, and I went in as a reservist. And when I got out, I ended up getting a job at WBAL Channel 11 News in Baltimore. So being from Annapolis, being from Baltimore, it was quite an honor to work at the local news station there, and that got my feet wet, basically working in TV graphics. So I was doing the early bird news, getting there, 5 a.m. news. And from there, I ended up hearing about some opportunities up at ESPN. So in 1999, I ended up getting a position as a graphic operator up in Bristol, Connecticut at ESPN. So.
Did you know that you wanted to do graphics, or it was just the art background that you had?
Yeah, I think, originally, what I wanted to do migrated once I got in to understand what was in the industry. I didn't really know much about television and broadcast. I was more into, really wanted to be an animator for Disney. As a little kid, that's what I did. I draw it all the time, and I was excited about that. But then once I got into doing Chiron, which is the original, it was the Infinite back then, going way back, Maxine. I just kind of fell in love with it, and for me, it's funny because I've always been, I have the art background, but also I'm very mechanical and. And just like structural of the graphics and in the format of folders and the nomenclature of the information and everything like that. So it kind of all just tied together. And I love being, working in the field and with ESPN and being in sports, and I just ran with it. So it was awesome.
Yeah, the Infinite I remember using early in my days as well. And with the technical part of the graphics design, what have you seen change over the years, starting from those days with Infinite?
Oh, I mean, everything back in the Infinite days, God, it was very flat, and it was very time consuming to get your graphics together. I mean, we used to have to merge the backgrounds and the font, and it was really interface, like data coming into the graphics was non-existent. So a lot of times, your font coordinator would be sitting there just yelling stats at you, working on Sports Center, and you would just be updating manual. I mean, college football Saturday was insane with all the games that were going on. And I mean, at that point, you were just a workhorse. You were just knocking out graphics from the time you started until the time you left, and it was fun because it was exciting. It was like, up to the second of getting a graphic on air sometimes, and that was exciting. And now, though it's still a challenge, we have resources now with data integration. Getting interface into the graphics so it's seamless. Basically, you call up a graphic and it automatically pulls that information based upon the parameters that you set within that graphic. So with that being said, I mean, but I think that's opened up the door to allow more expanded graphics. So we went from just a nuts and bolts range of different graphics that were available, a couple lower thirds and a couple full screens or so, to now just an arsenal of different expanded stack graphics. I mean, really from start to finish, a directory for insert graphics basically is it could be up to 20,000 graphics after the interface writes all the different graphics. It's insane. So it's amazing what we've done in that aspect. And back then, as I said, it was more flat. Starting out in my career, and just the migration of technology, going into the years, 2000 and the mid 2000s, the late 2000s, I think the tools to create these pretty extensive looking graphics and animations, everybody just ended up overproducing. They just really, everything was three-dimensional. Things were flying in. There was a lot of sound design. And
a new toy,
yeah. Well, oh, look what we can do, and they did it, and it was cool at the time, and it was like, oh, let me see what this can do, and things telescoping as you typed on and auto follow, and so with that being said, I think people, once we got into the later, 2010, 15, I would say 2015, we started to figure out more is not better. The overproduced graphics is taking away from the fan experience. And a lot of networks got rid of the sound design, and they the trend now is just a clean look. Still have everything to represent the information in a nice presentation, but you kind of just get rid of all that extra garbage that was just filling up the screen. So
right, you mentioned insert graphics. In this world, there's a variety of different types of graphics. Can you explain the differences between an insert graphic and, say, a motion graphic, or are they all kind of integrated together? Yeah,
so, when you're building a graphics package, you have the insert, which is basically you got your operators that are working on the live productions. So you have, if you're doing, say, a baseball productions, you have your insert graphics that would either come off a Chiron, Viz, and these are some of the big names in broadcast graphics platforms, Ross Expression, and then so usually you may have one or two different graphics platforms per production, and then you also have the Bug. So, which TV Graphics, the company I work with, is a provider of the insert Bug. So, in a lot of productions now are making the expanded stats coming from the Bug, so it's all seamless, just basically coming from the score Bug. And I say Bug, score Bug. Then, your element reel, which is your EVS elements, your TD elements. Those are more like your show element, your show open, your replay wipe, your rejoin, sponsor transitions, player transitions. And those are more of the big ticket, the ones that fly in and it's going to basically end cap your show, or your show open, which is really the network ID to that show. And those again, you want to put some 3D imagery in there. You want to put some, you want to do, the videos and such, and kind of tie it all together. So with those, most of that stuff is built offline. We build it in After Effects. We build it in Cinema 4D, and then we export it as QuickTimes or MFX files for it to be played back. So, we have a lot of sponsor transitions that people, are constantly being updated throughout the season, and so on. So, so those are the different kind of items that make up a graphics production.
Yeah, it can definitely be complicated, and in the insert package, there's thousands of options, and creating the motion graphics, like you said, open, transition, tease, all those things that go into supporting what the look and feel of the network you're working with is. So, Dave, what was your role as senior graphics systems developer with ESPN?
Yeah, so I was working primarily on, I pretty much did every show that there was when I was there.
Studio and event.
Yes, studio and event. Obviously there were some exceptions, but, I worked, I was the main lead on productions such as tennis. So I worked on the French Open, worked on Wimbledon, worked on X Games, which, I traveled out to Aspen and LA and did Summer X and Winter X. Let's see, what else? College Game Day. I was on College Game Day, which was just like 15 weeks straight of travel, going to a different college every week. And that, that really did not suck. That was a lot of fun. And then, let's see, and then, we met when I was overseeing international graphics. So, I had the opportunity to go to Mexico, Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, Argentina, a lot of South American, because we were working with ESPN Deportes, ESPN Sur. So I wore that hat for quite a few years. But everything, when you were in the department, if you weren't working on, if you weren't the lead on a particular show or project, then you were kind of just jumped around to different productions. So you would find yourself working on SportsCenter one night, baseball tonight on another night, NBA tonight, all those old school shows, and then ESPN News, which was just constant. Hours and hours of just updating, the same sports stories throughout the day. So, but it was awesome. It was great.
Well, when we met, it was actually the first time we met was in the Dominican Republic, trying to get that production off the ground, and you were teaching them how to use the machine. How different is it inside the country versus outside the country?
Oh, man, that's a great question. I mean, obviously the language barrier for me. I don't speak Spanish. I know a few words, but I think that was probably one of the biggest challenges, was just communicating. A lot of times we would have, I would say translator, but people, the font coordinators and all that, that would speak Spanish, and just basically trying to get them to understand how we produced versus how they produced. I remember, for instance, when I was in Argentina, working at their studio show, I remember that they kept their graphics. This was Deco. This was back in the day when Deco was around, made by Pinnacle, and they kept the graphics platform hot on air. It was always keyed the whole time, and it baffled me. Like, why would you just keep an open key? Because the era of, the era of mistake, or what am I trying to say? The possibility of making a mistake was so high, you simply just put something on your program channel and it was on air. So that was definitely different how they would do things. But I would say the language barrier one, and just trying to get them to understand the format of the directories, the graphics, and in the tempo of how we were produced. I mean, ESPN, we were producing graphics at a high level rate. It was nonstop, and sometimes these smaller productions they're more modest, and understandably so. But when you're working on these bigger productions such as ESPN, it's required to knock out as many graphics and get them on there. It's a batter graphic every time somebody walks up to the bat. Full screen starting lineups and all that. So yeah, it was kind of cool, working with this, but it was sometimes a struggle just trying to communicate with them.
Yeah. So when we're talking about different types of networks that you're working with, you've worked at the local level, you worked ESPN, the global, you've worked regional with Root Sports, and then golf, which I would consider a little more niche. What differences are there in the way the graphics philosophy is done?
I don't know if there's really a difference in the philosophy of the graphics. I think the biggest thing that I've seen working for the network versus regional is just the amount of resources that you have available. Once I got into the regional, coming from ESPN, which coming from a network and going to a regional was very eye-opening for me, because you ended up having to wear a lot more hats. ESPN is such a, the department that I was coming from with ESPN, there was probably 80, 90 people easily in that department. And I went to, a creative services department at Root Sports in Denver. It was a total of 10 of us. And, so it was like, if you needed something and someone wasn't available, you had to produce that yourself. And, I think it was very beneficial for me, because I always had that resource available. Like if I needed something, I could go to somebody and say, hey, I need this or I need that, versus, hey, I need to build this, so I'm just going to go ahead and build it. And it worked out great for me, because it allowed me to have a broader understanding of what is needed in the different departments that I was more focused on that one job, or now it allowed me to kind of see into all the different positions, which was great. So yeah, and then going to Golf Channel, obviously bigger department, but still limited resources to a certain extent. So yeah, when
you were in Denver, I actually followed shortly a couple of years after you did, to go to Universal Sports Network, and midway through my time there, we rebranded our graphics package. You actually had the opportunity to come in and freelance for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew what we needed, but translating that sometimes when you're talking to a very creative person, designer like you, and someone who's looking at, from our executives, trying to put together our ideas into what you're doing, can be a little bit of a challenge in trying to make that right. So what kind of process would you say works best when that happens in the design phase and then the execution phase?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is for me is as I mentioned before, don't overproduce. A lot of times things can look really awesome when you're building them in Cinema 4D or After Effects, but then trying to get those to translate in a real world, real time, environment, it sometimes doesn't work. Going into a new look, the main thing is that I do is sitting with the client is basically understanding what they want. What did they like about their previous look? What didn't they like about their previous look? What do they foresee? Because for me, I can design something all day and say, I think it's fantastic. But at the end of the day, the client's the one that really needs to sign off on this. They need to like it. So I always like to have that relationship with my clients to understand, because I think in their mind, they know everybody's looking at everybody else's work. We're looking at ESPN, we're looking at Fox, MLB Network and everything. And, I think people know what's out there. And, I think as we come together as a collective collaboration, asking those particular questions of like, what didn't you like about this graphic? What did you like about it? Where do you see it? And sometimes, you can do a, kind of a 3-tier where it's a modest design, more something like kind of in the middle. And then, over here, like where it's well kind of jazzed up and off the charts. And I, sometimes, so a lot of times when I design something, I'll have those 3 kind of different designs, even though that they're in the same kind of realm and look. One's a little bit more modest, one's a little bit more kind of, not over the top, but kind of, not too much zip and zang. And then the third one is where it's really a lot more produced. And a lot of times what happens is once I show those examples, they usually can say, hey, I like this, but then I like this over here. And it kind of just morphs together. Once you get kind of the backbone, like, once you have the score bug designed, the lower third designed, this is for insert, then everything kind of takes shape. The thing about a graphics package for a network is that everything's got to have that same look and feel. No matter what you're doing. So,
okay, when we talk about insert graphics, Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's the terminology for what we see in my graphics design. This is a double box. I actually was looking at relaunching my podcast in video form, and I figured who better to ask to do something than you. So you went ahead and created this for me. How did that process work? In terms of me, I know I wasn't looking for anything super complicated, but I know simplicity is one thing you've said.
Yeah.
And that seems to be what you've given me.
Yeah. The thing when you asked me to do this, you mentioned that you needed a double box, a triple box, and in a lower third. What I did was, you had your logo already established, which it's a very nice logo, and I like it a lot. It has that, sports feel with the shield and everything. So what I wanted to do, when I was building this is give you a clean look, and basically take the color schemes that were very similar to your logo. So bring those colors in, and, again, I keep saying, don't overproduce it, get the information out there. I think typeface is a big thing now with insert graphics, is to make sure that the typeface feels like it belongs there on the graphic. So,
And if you happen to be listening to this podcast, sorry to interject there, you can check out my YouTube channel and you'll see exactly what we're talking about. So continue, Dave.
Yeah. So, again, clean look, laying out the text. I've been doing this a long time. I wanted the name to stand out, so I gave you kind of a thin, thick font there, thin for the first name, thick for the last, to make it stand out. Sometimes if it's all the same font, it kind of bleeds together, so it really kind of gives it some separation there. And then the Twitter handle, just not making it overbearing to take away from the name. So making it very subtle but still readable there. You got space to do a 1-line or a 2-line and so on. So the actual background, I didn't want it to be too overbearing as well. So that's a very simple, give it some 3D depth as well, some texturing and some shadowing. But again, just make it nice and subtle to kind of work in with that look. So,
well, I've had a few comments on it, positive comments, and so
okay.
That obviously makes me feel good, and hopefully it does you too. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the examples you've worked on recently with TVG, which confuses me sometimes because I used to work for TVG Network, which is different, but this is TV Graphics. What we're going to look at is the MASN look, the Mid-Atlantic Sports Network. design that you did for the Baltimore Orioles at the beginning of 2022. So walk us through what we're seeing here, Dave, and maybe a bit about how it all works. So I'll start with the open.
Now, your Washington Nationals on MASN and streaming live on the MASN app.
Mid-Atlantic Sports Network, they are the network that produces games for the Washington Nationals and the Baltimore Orioles, which happens to be my hometown, which was such an honor to work on the Orioles productions growing up, watching them at home. Basically, Mid-Atlantic Sports Network had a look that was, I don't want to say outdated, but it was around for quite a long time. A shelf life for a graphics package usually is somewhere between the 5 to 7 years at the most, really. But yeah, this I believe they were on using the same graphics look for probably about it had to be 10 plus. So, they were definitely due, and they were excited to get a brand new look. The thing about with Mid-Atlantic Sports Network, with working with those guys, is that they wanted to, again, just kind of come current with their look. Before they had this kind of glassy, again, overproduced look, and they wanted to kind of get more into just having a cleaner look. This right here, this is one of the big ticket graphics that we were talking about here. This is their title card coming out of their show open. So, you want to make that one a little bit more exciting. Here we have and again, the thing with MASN, they wanted to spotlight the team, but yet also tie in to the network. Whereas before, I think more of the team had the spotlight in their broadcast, where they wanted the team and MASN to kind of live in that same realm, to kind of coincide together. You're watching the Nationals on MASN, you're watching the Orioles on MASN, instead of you're just watching the Orioles. So let's bring in more of that network, based upon this show open. Again, they needed some availability to put in footage that they change out, daily, weekly. So we had to give them a window to be able to put in that updated footage. Players get traded and such. So, but yeah, it was. We started out with this kind of environment, this kind of like warehousey type feeling. And, for Camden Yards, where the Orioles play, it's more of a brick facade versus, and it's funny because as I was kind of developing this, versus National Park, it's more of a stone environment. So it's funny, like you'll see kind of different texture and treatments just in that aspect itself. So here's the Orioles right here, again, just spotlighting the O's logo and the build upon, and then getting some fan footage. And then you got your MASN built in, and then boom, at the end, once they come in, they coincide together, and then it leads into the game. It was a good feel. They loved it, and we built them both a short and a long version in case they're running late or something. They had that short version just to get to action if they need to. So
yeah, and then again, going back to insert graphics, we have a bug example, which is the score, which can be kind of complicated now from my understanding. It's been a few years since I've actually looked into it, but a lot of data goes into their separate operator. Yep. So what do we see here in terms of the score?
Yeah, so this was a project I worked on for Marquee. They were producing the games for the Chicago Cubs, and they had a bug that they didn't really like. They liked their insert package, but they were not happy with their current bug. So they came to us for a redesign. And with this particular project, I think the big thing was just layout. They wanted a simple logos, again, which is more of a trend. People recognize the logos now. getting away from tri-codes and team names up on the bug, and just really a simplistic, but yet still making things pop. The color scheme of the Cubs, obviously incorporating those aspects into the home run animation right here, and just the overall bug. But again, this stuff right here, the thing is, all the data is coming in, and it automatically produces that. So as soon as that guy hits a home run, the bug up. So that's the intro animation right there that you just showed. So again, just giving Marquee that initial love. It was a nice project, a nice redesign on that, and the client loves it. So.
I've seen how it's created firsthand, at ESPN as well as, with Universal Sports Network. And it's not something that happens overnight. And I think when fans see it on TV, sometimes they're like, oh, that's really cool. I wonder how that works. Or I know I've had questions about, how do they get the updated, batting average if it's baseball, or all these stats that are updated so quickly. How do they do that? Is there somebody next to them that's doing that? And it's a combination of both now.
It is, yeah.
So when you're in the TV truck, let's say on a game, describe the relationship that you have with the producer and the graphics producer and even the director, even though I know they're mostly just having you execute it.
Yeah, so usually when you sit down in a production, you're working with a coordinator. Sometimes it's just you, depending on the production. But, you start out with a rundown, and with live games, obviously a lot of stuff is reactive. It's like, oh, this happened, all right, let me get this. But there's always a format to, there's a guy that, there's a batter font when he goes up. You've got your pitcher slab. And then, you got your lineups in defense when you're coming in. So, with the producer, a lot of times the coordinator works with them more so, and they're asking for particular full screens information. They want to highlight a particular player or team stat. There might be some news where they need a quote panel, and so on. There is stuff that you manually build, and then there's stuff that's interfaced. So, for example, if I'm working on golf, which I've done live events with golf, you have two machines. You have an A machine and a B machine. The A machine is the upper shot graphics and the scorecards and any lowers. The B machine is providing all the leaderboards, all the promos and such. So any full screens and leaderboards. So, what people don't realize, golf is probably one of the more graphic intensive when you're actually doing the event than say baseball or football, because it's like every shot, and they're going, someone hits a shot, they change cameras, they go to the next player, and then the next player, and the next player. So it is like constantly, and like how far is he from the pin? All these different expanded stats that you have to pop on the graphic. He's leader, he's co-leader. So when a guy comes up, he's for birdie, or whatever. I don't know. It's just so many different variations of possibilities that you have to kind of be ready for. But yeah, I've worked on both studio and remote, so I think each production has their own different way of following along and knowing what you have to produce for that graphically. Either with the studio you need topic bars and more of a discussion panel, versus if you're doing a game, it's more of like lower thirds for your players and your full screens and all that, slabs and so on. Currently right now I'm working on something new, which is exciting, is I'm working in virtual reality. So I'm doing some NBA games for the VR Oculus headsets now. And this, I think, is groundbreaking. I think a lot of people are going into, so when they're watching the game, they feel like they're in the game. And what happens with our graphics is that it bends to follow the camera. So when they're looking around, so it's in that sphere, half a sphere, which is really cool. So there's all kinds of different new avenues. There's augmented reality now, which is huge. You watch some of the games, you got graphics popping out of off the field. You got, in the sports center, they're coming in where, they're standing next to a graphic. I know Weather Channel is huge for this, where, they'll watch a tornado come into the studio, it's really cool stuff. And, and so there is a lot of different avenues for graphics and broadcasts, which is really cool. So,
reflecting a little bit on some of that technology, you were at ESPN when they did that 3D, which no longer exists, but there was a lot that went into that, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's funny because, it was the new shiny toy that everybody was just like really on board with 3D television. People were going to wear these glasses and watch 3D TV, which, the concept of it, it was pretty cool. But man, there was so many resources put into this, and I just remember like the rebuild of the graphics packages that we had to do just to kind of work into that environment. It was insane, but it was really funny when you would walk into a TV truck and everybody's sitting there with these goggles, these glasses on. It was hilarious, So, but yeah, these trends, it's like, the VR stuff now and the augmented reality, and who knows, who knows what's going to be next. It's going to be awesome. So, there's going to be a cross between the two, with AR and VR. I'm really excited about the experience, especially for sports broadcasting, that's going to be coming to these fans. It's going to be so interactive and so immersive. It's going to be amazing. Like, you're going to be able to be right there, So technology is going in the right direction, and I'm glad to be a part of that. It's really cool. So,
what's been the most memorable graphics package that you've been a part of in your career?
The most memorable, probably, looking at, I've been doing this for 25 years now. I would say probably working on Wimbledon. Wimbledon was just an amazing, with just is the history of that event. Knowing that you're on that international stage, and when I was overseeing that graphics package, we had, I had to not just oversee what was going back domestically, but I had to make sure, what I was doing was going, internationally as well, for the world feed and all that. We were providing graphics for them as well. And just, it was really cool, going obviously out there to Wimbledon and seeing, the players in their whites, and it was a really cool experience. And this was 2005 when I worked on that. So that was a long time ago. And again, it was like, things have changed a lot in the industry, but it was really cool. Yeah.
And when you got into this business, how much did you think you would see of the world in a position like this?
Wow. It's been a ride, dude. It really has. I did not, when I got into this, and again, starting at a news station in Baltimore, that was pretty much the extent. Working in sports broadcasting really opened up a lot of doors and a lot of experiences that, I hold dear to my heart. Meeting people like you, Don. It's been an awesome ride, and being proud of the work that I've done over the years, and just the relationships I've made along the way. It's just phenomenal. So,
when we lived in Connecticut, we would share dinners and have each other over at the house. And I remember one night going down into your basement, nothing scary here at all, but you had showed me some initial designs of a company that you're now a part of and are the creator of. Tell me what that is, and if you remember that night, tell everybody what you were showing me, and then how it's kind of evolved from there.
Yeah, so I think you're talking about 2009 is when I came up with this concept. It's funny. I always really enjoyed being athletic, and I've done quite a few like mud runs and such, and
Tough Mudder we did together.
We did the Tough Mudder.
They did that.
Yep, the first year up in Massachusetts. Vermont. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, Mount Snow.
Mount Snow. Yeah. So yeah, it's been a blast, and I ended up basically concepting a Ninja Warrior course, which I was showing you, and I decided that I wanted to build something that was more functional than what they were doing for the show. And so I had this kind of idea of building the same amount of obstacles and the same amount of space that is equipped for the obstacles, but basically capitalize on space. So I kind of did this kind of side-by-side configuration of this course. And so this was 2009. I was really excited. I was showing you and kind of came up with some different 3D designs of it and everything. And it's funny, Don. I mean, it was really eye-opening and kind of a gut check when you realize how much that material cost. And I was like, oh God, this is going to cost me. I can't do this. This is going to cost me so much money. So I decided to table that. And I moved out to Colorado, and I was working out there at Root, and I decided to. I was talking to my wife. I was like, God, I think there's something there, and I'm gonna kick myself in the butt if I don't do it. And she agreed. She's like, just go after it. Which again, you gotta it's amazing having a supportive wife. I mean that I wouldn't be where I am today without her. So, but yeah, she said let's do it. So I ended up buying the material. I had the design, and I built my own Ninja Warrior obstacle course. And so out in Colorado is where it started, and it started off as a mobile course, and I was getting hired out to do events, and I ended up becoming the premier ninja course for hire, which is crazy. So I was doing events, getting hired out by PlayStation, American Diabetes Association. I was doing events at NFL fields. I did events with both hosts of American Ninja Warrior, Matt Eisman and Akbar. I won't even try to pronounce his last name. So, and it was awesome. I mean, I had this thing that was going from the West Coast to the East Coast doing events. We were constantly booked doing events, and it was great. And so COVID hit, and everything, all the events went away. And I was like, all right, this is pretty much a done deal. And what was great about it was I had this business I was working on the side, and I built it to where I had people running it, which is key. I would manage it, at night, putting in the late hours and everything, but I was still able to do my creative work. And when COVID hit and all that went down, I ended up moving. I live now in Florida, and I ended up moving the course here to Kissimmee, Florida. And one of the events that I was planning on doing was Old Town. It's a theme park in Kissimmee, Florida. And they reached out to me and said, hey, look, I know we're not able to do the event, but what do you say, doing a permanent location, like a brick and mortar location, and having it here at Old Town? And I was like, let's do it. And so I built out the space, and now I have a theme park ninja attraction called Xtreme Ninja Challenge in Kissimmee, Florida, part of Old Town. And we I mean, I've been open since December of 2020, and I mean, we've had, I think, like around 40,000 people that have come through the course at this point right now. So it's been,
Wow.
it's been great, yeah, and counting. So yeah, it's been awesome.
Well, when this blows up nationwide or globally, I can say I knew you when.
Well, we can only hope. I mean, we are starting to look at a second location. Yeah, you know, the thing about it, Don, is that the thing I love about having a ninja course is, you know, and it's a big jungle gym, it's just that people are active. You know, especially being at a theme park, you know, these kids are walking around, they're going on rides. You know, my kid is you know, he does this as well as he gets on his Nintendo Switch, and a lot of, you know, playing games and stuff, which is great. You know, I love games. I love, you know, I work in graphics. I love games and such. But also, there's got to be a balance where we're keeping ourselves and our kids moving. And that's the thing, you know, that I love about this is that, you know, you could be in the video game, like you're in a ninja course. You know, you are the hero, which is, you know, is great. And, you know, if you cannot do it, it's not about completing the obstacle. It's about trying it. It's just about doing it. And the more you do something, the better you're going to do at it, you know? So I like the aspect that we're getting kids moving, we're getting adults moving. You know, my motto at the Ninja Course is it's where a kid can play and grow, and where an adult can be a kid again. I love it. So, yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Well, the Wii actually did that for me last week. My daughter pulled it out. She's interested in golf, so we played a little golf together on the
Nice.
Wii from, 2006, maybe?
Yeah,
So
that's awesome.
So I know what you mean, and
Yeah.
you know, I'd look forward when I get out to Florida again, visiting your shop and everything. So,
Yeah, it'd be great.
So kind of to tie it all back to the beginning, Dave, what, if anything we haven't covered, what would you like people to know about graphics and what they see on the air in terms of a studio show or sports show, an event, things like that?
Yeah, I think just for the, you know, the common fan that watches the broadcast, you know, I would like them to know that there are people working tirelessly behind the scenes. You know, there are so many man hours that are put into the final product that people see at home. And, you know, we love what we do. And, you know, for me, you know, I have that satisfaction of putting a good production on. You know, but it's funny because, you know, I was a victim of this as well before I got into this. You just think it automatically happens. You know, you think it's just, but, you know, there's concepting, there's, you know, design phases, then there's executing it, then there's interfacing it and putting data in it. There's so many steps to the final product that they're seeing on air. And you know, a lot of times, you know, I'll tell people, yeah, what do you do? And I say, well, I do graphics for broadcasts. And they're like, oh yeah, like that yellow line that you see on the screen. Yeah, somewhat. Yeah, sort of. You know, that's one aspect. But yeah, there's just so much to it. You know, and again, this is sports. You know, this translates to news, talk shows. There's so many different facets of what we do. You know, a big honor was I worked on the Olympics. Which is something that I always wanted to do. So I was able to work on the Summer Olympics for Tokyo. And just the amount of people that came together to get those games to you guys, to the fans at home, it's just amazing. It's just amazing. So I'm honored to be in this field. And you know, it's been a great career, and I'm looking forward to continuing to do things that, you know, that I haven't done, and see how the industry changes in the future. It's going to be awesome. So,
All right, two things before I let you go. One, what kind of memorabilia sticks out to you that you might have lying around your office?
It's funny because I'm actually in the process of remodeling my office a little bit. But, you know, I guess, let's see, here, this right here is kind of cool. This was when I was on college game day, and I got, you know, it's kind of old now, but I got a hat signed, one of the hard hats signed by Herb Street, Lee Corso, and Chris Fowler here, which is really cool. So, I'll always keep this here. Let's see, what else? I mean, some Emmy plaques I think is pretty cool. Oh, this is cool. This is Mark May. A little signature here. He signed it for me, which I was a huge fan of Mark May, and phenomenal just to be able to meet some of these guys that that you watched on TV, and yeah, it's super cool. And then it's funny actually, on the back of it's all my business cards over the years. So I got Channel 11 News, ESPN, Root, and then golf here. So, and then so super cool.
Well, and I see the NBC light there. I don't know where you got that, but that I tell you, when I was at ESPN, I would see all the directors have the plaque or the signs that were created for the sets in their offices, and graphics people would have all that same stuff. And I was always a little kind of jealous because as a producer, we never got that stuff. But it's just fun to see all the creations that have happened over the years in sports TV.
Yeah, it's super cool.
All right, then final question: what is your favorite sports movie, and why?
Favorite sports movie and why? Well, I would probably have to say The Natural. And I think it's just because when I was a kid, watching Robert Redford, and it was such a great movie, and it's one of those movies that, it to me it's timeless. Like, when he hit that home run and smashed that light, it was just a good movie, and I always remember it to today. It was something that I always I always wanted to be that baseball player, but some of us don't end up, I played baseball when I was a kid, but we don't end up on the field, but I could say I'm working with these guys, which is awesome.
Yeah. Very small percentage go on to play at that level.
Right, exactly.
So, all right, Dave Kroner, thank you so much for your time. It's been a great having you as a friend over the years, and thanks for sharing everything that goes in. I actually learned a little bit today as well, but hearing it from you, it's been great. So we'll look forward to future designs from you. Hopefully Xtreme Ninja Challenge is very successful for you, and look forward to talking to you in the future.
Thanks, Don. I appreciate you having me, bud.
Dave and I talked about a fraction of the graphics that appear on your TV, so if you don't happen to work in the broadcasting business, the next time you're watching sports, you'll know what goes into making those graphics come to life. And if you're in Kissimmee, Florida, stop by Xtreme Ninja Challenge. For more Sports in the Making podcast episodes, visit our YouTube page, Sports in the Making Podcast, or take a listen on your favorite audio podcast platform. Also be sure to check out Twitter @SportsMaking, as well as the Facebook page. Thanks for listening to Sports in the Making. I'm Don Cardona.